She had everything: wealth, power, and a name whispered with respect in every boardroom. But behind the polished image was a secret she'd buried for decades. When she agreed to that blind date, she never imagined it would be with a black man, or that his face would unlock memories she'd fought to forget. One dinner, two lives colliding under soft candlelight, and a truth so explosive it would force her to choose between the life she built and the person she once was. Eleanor Whitmore had spent her life mastering control of boardrooms, of markets, of people. At 40, she was one of the youngest CEOs on Wall Street, a symbol of resilience after the car accident that had left her paralyzed from the waist down. She rolled through marble hallways and glass offices with a quiet grace that demanded respect. To most, she was untouchable, brilliant, elegant, and unbreakable. But when the lights went out and the speeches ended, the silence in her penthouse was deafening. Behind the silver champagne flutes and city skyline, there lingered something heavier, a loneliness wrapped in perfection. Her assistant had suggested the blind date. "You need someone who sees you, not the chair," she'd said. Eleanor had laughed it off, but curiosity won. That Friday night, the restaurant was a symphony of polished silver and whispered conversations. She waited at the corner table, her reflection flickering against the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. And then he walked in, tall, composed, eyes filled with warmth and quiet confidence. His suit fit him like a story well lived, his presence both commanding and calm. When he smiled, something inside her shifted, a faint pulse of recognition she couldn't explain. As he sat across from her, the world seemed to slow. There was something familiar about him, something she couldn't quite name. But as the evening unfolded, she would learn that their meeting wasn't by chance. It was fate, and it was about to tear open a truth she had spent years trying to forget. The conversation started light: business, travel, the art of surviving long weeks. Eleanor spoke carefully, every word polished, her tone balanced between curiosity and caution. He listened with patience, his laughter rich but unforced. His name was Marcus, an architect who had just opened his own design firm downtown. Every sentence he spoke carried a quiet pride, not the kind born from ego, but from endurance. As the dinner continued, she found herself studying him. The way he moved, the confidence in his posture, the intelligence behind his calm gaze. Yet beneath that serenity, she could sense something, a storm he'd learned to hide. When their hands brushed accidentally across the table, she felt it, that strange pull again, deep and unexplainable. Then came a pause, a small, heavy silence. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "You know," he said softly, "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." Her pulse faltered. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her with eyes that no longer smiled. "You don't remember me, do you?" The restaurant around them seemed to fade. The murmurs, the music, the soft clinking of glass, all swallowed by the growing tension between them. And then, slowly, pieces began to align in her mind. The name, the face, the familiarity that had tugged at her since he walked in. He had once been part of her world, but not as an equal. Years ago, before her accident, before the fame and titles, her family owned a small manufacturing company in Georgia. His father had worked there, brilliant, loyal, underpaid. One day, a dispute over a contract turned ugly. Accusations were made. Her father had called the police. Marcus's father had been handcuffed right in front of his teenage son, accused of theft, humiliated, and later proven innocent. But the damage was done. His career was destroyed. Eleanor's throat tightened. The memory, buried deep beneath decades of guilt and denial, came rushing back. The press headlines, the tears, the silence at the dinner table when her mother told her not to get too involved. Now, across the candlelit table, the son of that man sat before her, successful, composed, and looking directly into the eyes of the woman who bore the name that had broken his family. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His calmness carried more weight than anger ever could. "I thought I'd move past it," he said quietly, "until I saw your name on the invitation." Eleanor's chest tightened, her polished poise beginning to crack. She wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. The air between them was thick with years of unspoken truth. Around them, the restaurant continued as if nothing had happened. But in that corner, beneath the soft golden light, two lives, once divided by privilege and pain, were about to collide again in a way that neither could walk away from unchanged. The world around them blurred into silence, just two people caught between past and present. The candle between them flickered, its flame stretching thin, trembling, like the fragile thread connecting their lives. Eleanor's voice finally broke through, soft, trembling. "Marcus, I didn't know. I was just a child." He closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. "You didn't have to know," he said. "You just had to live with what your name did. We lost everything. My father, he never worked again. People looked at him like a criminal, even after the truth came out. And your family? They went on like nothing happened." Her breath caught in her throat. The air felt heavy, filled with guilt she could no longer disguise behind wealth or reputation. "I thought it was all behind us," she whispered. "For you, maybe," he said quietly. "For me, it's been every door that didn't open, every face that judged before I spoke, every time I had to prove I belonged in rooms I'd already earned my place in." The pain in his voice wasn't bitter, it was exhausted, the kind that comes after years of carrying a story the world refuses to hear. And for the first time in years, Eleanor felt small, not because of her chair, not because of her body, but because she finally saw herself through someone else's eyes. The noise of the restaurant returned, distant and hollow. People were laughing, living, unaware that history was quietly demanding justice at a corner table. She looked at him, eyes glistening. "If I could change what happened." He met her gaze, firm but not cruel. "You can't change it," he said, "but you can stop pretending it never mattered." The words hit harder than anger ever could, and in that instant she realized forgiveness wasn't owed. It had to be earned. The dinner ended in silence. No shouting, no apologies that could erase decades, just quiet truth sitting between them like an old photograph finally brought to light. Marcus stood first. For a moment he hesitated, then placed a card on the table, his firm's logo embossed in gold. "If you ever want to build something real," he said, his voice calm, "call me." Eleanor nodded, unable to speak. She watched him leave, tall, poised, walking through the same doors her family had once closed on his. For a long time, she sat there, staring at the flickering candlelight, feeling the weight of her father's legacy pressing against her chest. The woman who had built empires now realized how small her power really was when measured against truth. Weeks passed. The memory didn't fade. It followed her through every board meeting, every headline, every award. She began to notice things she had once ignored, the voices silenced in the room she led, the names missing from the top floors of her company. Then, one morning, she made a decision that would change everything. She called Marcus. Months later, a new foundation launched, one dedicated to fairness, opportunity, and rebuilding lives once written off by prejudice. She didn't do it for redemption. She did it because silence had cost too much. At the opening ceremony, cameras flashed. Reporters asked about her sudden shift in focus. She simply smiled and said, "Because the truth deserves more than regret, it deserves action." Behind the crowd, Marcus watched quietly, his expression unreadable. But for the first time, when their eyes met, there was something different, not forgiveness, not friendship, but understanding. Because sometimes the past doesn't need to be erased. It just needs to be faced. Stories like this remind us that change doesn't start in headlines. It starts in moments of truth, when someone chooses to see beyond fear, privilege, or pain. If this story moved you, take a second to share it, not for views, but for voices still waiting to be heard. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because together, we can keep these truths alive, one story at a time.